Man of God, the porn is not the problem. It's the guilt and the shame that you have around it that's keeping you stuck. Now, I know this goes against everything the church has threw in your face, but I promise if you watch to the end, I'm going to prove it to you on an energetic level. And I'm going to show you how you can go from a finite game of guilt and shame and fear and go to an infinite game of peace and joy and outgrow a lot of the vices that are keeping you stuck, like the pornography. Now, before we get into this map of consciousness here, I want to lay some groundwork. I get a lot of questions. I've been coaching men for almost 15 years now. I have worked in the church. I have done Q&As online. I have coaching programs both in person, online. I've worked with men all over the world. And one of the biggest problems and struggles with men is what they'll usually call lust. Okay. They don't want to get into the more specific words. Like if you talk to a man that's been in church even 2 times and he's struggling with something in the realm of perversion and sex and pornography, he gonna just call it lust. All right. They're like, I'm a brother struggling with lust. That means he's beating his meat. Okay. And if you notice, there's not that many safe spaces to talk about it. I love me some Jesus. I love me the church, but probably one of the things I think the church drops the ball on the most, and by far, it's how they deal with almost all things sex on both sides with men and women. And I get it, because when you use guilt and shame, it's not the best strategy. It's a very finite strategy, but it can get you results very quickly and it's very controlling. But I just want to ask you, think about it. The times that people use the guilt and the shame, or you just feel any kind of guilt or shame, do you feel great? Do you feel empowered? And do you feel more free or more like a slave? Right? And that's a good segue. No, actually, not yet. We're going to get to this map of consciousness. And so I do want to put some of you guys at ease and let you know you're not alone. This is a very, 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 very common issue. And unfortunately, it gets mishandled. And that's why most men stay in a cycle, in a negative feedback loop that keeps them stuck. And so one of the most foundational pieces we got to get out the way is that you are not about to go to hell because you've been on a porn website or because you've been touching your genitals. It's beyond the scope of this video, but I promise you that is such a tiny and puny view of God that you think he's all powerful. He is love. He died for your sins, but he takes it all back because you touched your genitals. He was playing with your dingaling, so he don't fluff with you no more. And there are so many men like feeling worthless, feeling like God doesn't care about them, or even like they're going to hell, and they've pissed off Sky Daddy because they were tickling their pickle. Now, please don't hear in any part of this video where I'm trying to justify it. I'm just saying it's way closer to spiritual immaturity than it is like being evil, being wrong, being shamed and hated by God. Again, that's just cookie cutter theology passed down from bad church tradition, not actual word of God. And so now we can start to dive into this map of consciousness. Now, this is by a brother named David Hawkins, and he has a lot of books on this. Probably the most popular is one called Power versus Force. I usually don't recommend it. I don't think you have to read it. Honestly, I think there's enough videos breaking it down. You could probably ask ChatGPT to summarize it. This video will probably give you a good introduction into it. But if you really want to deep dive, I mean, check it out. I'm not going to go into like the science and how he developed it. I don't think that's necessary. I think if you just look at these emotions over here on the left and you think through the ones that you felt in your life, I'm sure when you felt the ones at the top, like up here, you felt a lot better than the ones down here, right? And the ones at the bottom, you can think of finite or force, and the ones at the top, so this is the dividing line right here at courage. And everything above that, you can think of it as being infinite or power. And we want to move with power, not force in our life. And another thing to note is this dividing line right here. Everything above it is empowering you, and everything below it is draining power. And again, no theory, no crazy shenanigans. Just think common sense in your life. When you felt guilt and shame, how did you feel? I'm sure you felt heavy. You didn't feel great. You didn't feel very empowered. Okay. And think of the times where you felt peace, joy, love. I'm sure it was quite the opposite, right? And so the immature man is going to hear this and he's like, bet I'm just going to beat my meat and I'm not going to feel bad. If those are the only ears you have to receive, I will actually take that as a start. Again, just getting some of the guilt and the shame out of there is going to help. Now, let's look at a more mature approach. Instead of living in like a negation, think of like the anti war. Let's just live in the positive. Let's be fruitful. So it's more like pro peace, right? Let's be peaceful instead of anti war. Just as an example, right? That's not actually a modern political statement at all right now. That's just a classic example. And so instead of not being feeling guilty, not feeling shameful, let's just be at peace. Let's just be at joy, right? And this is what Jesus is talking about when he's saying, even when you look at somebody with anger, that's like murder because it's dropping you energetically. When you're tapping into the anger, of course, it's not the same as physically killing someone, but it's also, I'm going to get to a really big point here a little bit later in this video when we talk a little bit more tactically. But it's worth understanding that these maps, like this, your level of consciousness is what you create from. Okay. A lot of us think that the world outside of us makes us feel a certain way. No, the world outside of you is just a mirror reflecting back to you your level of consciousness. And so, and just think about it very practically. That's the last time you were angry or you were feeling anger. I'm sure you didn't have thoughts anywhere near the wavelength that you had when you were at joy, right? And I want you to think of these as like different radio stations. And when you are tuned in to joy, it's almost like some of your, those video games that give you different choices that you can make, right? The choices you can make are completely different at joy than the ones that you can make when you are at anger. So hopefully you can start to see how this isn't a justification for any of your vices. This is for you to just be mindful at how you're approaching things consciously. Because like I said, everything down here is draining you energetic. And so because you don't even start to get to any power until you hit courage, no matter what you're going through, the best response you could have at a minimum is to do the most courageous thing that you can think of toward in that situation. Also, something else to note about this map of consciousness is you notice reason is pretty high up here. And so you can assure yourself that if you think you are seeing a situation clearly, but you are below reason and you're any one of these other levels, you can imagine that you have it a little bit distorted. Okay. So you are afraid and you're analyzing the situation and you think you have it calculated and you have a clear view on things. I promise you that is clouding your judgment. And it's not until you can reach a place of calm and move up these levels of consciousness, then you start to remove the fog and see things, not only just see things, see people, places, and things for what they truly are. And so it's important to take your level of consciousness serious, but even down to a nervous system level, because so many of us are in so much chronic stress that you're stuck in survival mode. And you wake up in survival mode and you go to work in survival mode and you look at your relationship through the lens of survival mode. You're trying to build a business or a side hustle in survival mode, and you wonder why the harder you work, it's almost like you're just burning yourself out and you're on a big old hamster wheel. And it's not that the right options and actions aren't available to you. You genuinely just don't see them because you're at such a low level of consciousness. Now, a deeper way we can unpack this is by looking at something that our mind has called the reticular activating system, or the RAS. And an oversimplification of it is essentially it's like your mind's filtering system. Okay. It filters out certain things that it feels like aren't important. and it highlights certain things. So think of like the yellow highlights here, certain things that it does think are important. And then it will highlight other things as dangerous. That's what the red is. And this is all based off on a nervous system and a programming level, things that you have deemed as safe, as good, as bad. And so things that it think are important to you. So for example, if you've ever had the experience of getting a new car, and then you look out on the road and you start seeing that same car everywhere now. It's like overnight everyone bought the car. Well, of course that didn't happen, but before it just wasn't part of your identity. Like you didn't identify with it. Now that you do and it's important, your mind highlights it and you see it more. And this is important to know because the opportunities that you see and the definitions and beliefs that you have are completely different depending on your state of consciousness. When you are in survival mode, you're not thinking creatively, you're not thinking expansively, you're not being resourceful. You are playing a very finite, small game. And so we're just going to illustrate all the things outside of us that aren't us as just this blob here. Okay, that's everything that's not you. And the finite man thinks that this stuff dictates his level of consciousness. All right. He gets a past due bill. His wife is upset. His kids are tripping. Then he becomes fearful. He becomes angry, grief, whatever it may be. But the infinite man knows it's actually the reverse, that it's a state of consciousness that creates the world around him. I want you to think of the three-dimensional world as like a mirror, okay? And it's just reflecting back to you the state of consciousness that you're creating and that you're at. Now, thank God it's not instant, like one to one, right? Because some of your more hateful thoughts about yourself or other people would like manifest like that. But if you just think through your life and the state of consciousness that you're typically at, because all of us have experienced, every single one of these, maybe not enlightenment, but you've touched every single one of these. It's just usually something either pulls you down, but you have like a normal home, like a home base, like a general area that you might reside most of the time. And that's worth thinking through. Like, what is that? And you'll notice that the world around you will reflect that. Okay. It will reflect the state of consciousness that you're typically at because you're creating from it. Because similar to how like you can't see yourself without some sort of reflection or mirror, as consciousness, as a soul, you can't experience yourself. And so the world around you works as like a mirror to help you see that. But let's say you saw in the mirror that you had something on your face, you wouldn't try to change it on the mirror, right? You would have to actually fix it on your face. And so the best way to change your circumstances isn't just going out in the world and saying, all right, I got to work harder. I got to do more. I got to fix this in my relationship. No. You got to first raise your level of consciousness and then create from there, because it's the consciousness that creates the circumstances, not the other way around. And when you understand that, again, be patient with yourself. It may take some time, but then you can start repositioning and find a higher home on this map of consciousness. And then as you do that, you'll just outgrow those vices. Because think of the times you were at the most peace or had the most joy. Did you need anything, any person, place, or thing outside of you to make you feel better? Right? Were you looking to go beat your meat? Were you needing someone else? Were you needing a certain kind of food? No, you were good. You were full within yourself. And an analogy that I'll maybe overuse sometimes is being full on like your favorite food. Like if I had gave you that and you were full, like a comfortable full, not like a stomach hurting stuffed full. But let's say you were full off your favorite food and then I kept giving you more plates of it. You wouldn't want it, right? At some point, it almost make you sick. And if I kept giving you plates, you'd have to give it away. You'd be like, no, I don't need it. I'm full. And that's the place you're trying to get to spiritually. And from that place, you don't need any vice, whether it's porn or anything else. And that's a good start. Okay. Of course, you should do things to regulate your nervous system, improve your sleep, start eating better, get to moving, working out. Also, things like meditation, visualization, breath work, all things you could Google, YouTube, ask Chatman about. Chatman is Chat GPT, if you ever hear me say that. And all of that will help you slowly improve your level of consciousness. If you want some hand holding, I actually have a 12-week program. If I zoom out here, you'll see some of the stuff that I have been working with my higher level clients on. So the map of consciousness, we don't even get to till about midway through. So like 6 weeks in, because there's a lot of things to help you execute on that a lot more consistently. But we get into emotional regulating, regulating your nervous system, ultimately just gamifying your life and making life a lot more fun. We get into identity, changing states of being able to change your state and control your emotions on a dime. All of this, again, none of these drawings are going to make sense, but we unpack this over the course of 12 weeks. We also gamify it, turn your life into a game. So you have an app on your phone. You'll get expert coaching and a safe place where you can heal and fulfill your purpose. This is one of the so when you close your day inside of the game, you get you get some like gamification, you get feedback on your day. Again, none of this is going to make sense to you outside of the program, but just imagine your favorite games and how those hook you. It's not random. Like gamification gives us data driven decisions and that feedback that we need that hooks us. And so imagine being hooked on your life as a video game like you are your favorite RPGs or something like that. Now we have a couple levels of gamification. The lowest one is our rhythm level. We don't get into any of the maps of consciousness, but we do start gamification there. I'll leave a document that has all the details on the rhythm challenge. And it's our momentum level. That is the big one where we unpack the map of consciousness. Everything you see here, this is the infinite leadership challenge that is part of our momentum program. Okay. I'll have a document in the description that goes over all the details of the program and a way for you to secure a spot if you want to join us. But I hope this helped, man of God. Please ditch the finite strategies, live from an infinite place of consciousness. If you have any questions, drop them below. I love you guys. And until next time, God first, God bless.